Ethereum is actually starting to look quite good. Yes, you heard that right. In today's video, we'll be talking about how if Bitcoin can hold these current levels, it's highly likely that Ethereum will be getting a pretty aggressive pump. We'll be going over the Bitcoin chart, talking about the key support and resistance levels for your trading strategies, and of course, talking about the most recent news that can impact the market. If you enjoyed the content, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe. Without further ado, let's jump right into the video. First of all, we just entered a quick Bitcoin long in my community, and you can see that we're now sitting at about $1,000 in profit on this active trade. So if you want to join my community, you have the third link in my description down below where I provide free signals for all of you that have signed up with my affiliate links. Now let's jump right into the video. So Ethereum is looking good. Why do I think that? Look at how we've been holding this current support level. Basically, over the past month, every single time that Ethereum has wicked below this level, we managed to hold it as support. And this is starting to look extremely positive for Ethereum. Now, of course, if Bitcoin starts correcting aggressively here, it's highly likely that Ethereum will not be able to make this move. But I do want you to be aware, because if we take a look at the ETH Bitcoin chart, we can see that we are now officially flirting with the bull market support band. What does this mean? Well, it just means that we're starting to see Ethereum ever so slightly continue to outperform Bitcoin. Now, you'll remember in my previous video, what we want to see here is for Ethereum against Bitcoin to break above this bull market support band and hold it as support, and then we could likely get a much larger move. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that altcoin season is here, but what it does mean is that we could be seeing some form of relief, especially if Ethereum can go ahead and make this move. Now, if we zoom out a little bit here, it is fully within my expectations that Bitcoin will come back down and test this fair value gap. It just makes sense, especially after we come back and perhaps test this wick, and of course, this wick. I do think it is highly likely that we go ahead and chop around into this level. That being said though, you know I've been looking at this liquidity chart in my previous videos, and we can see that there's a ton of liquidity getting built to the upside. I don't think that the top is in for this cycle. Now, you know my base case. I think that the top of this cycle will likely be around Q3, Q4 of this year, and I don't think that what we saw was the final top. That being said, we talked about the 2021 scenario where Bitcoin formed a high, corrected, and then formed a little bit of a higher high to go into a bear market. I don't think that this is the scenario, and I don't think that the market makers will make it this easy. That being said, I don't necessarily think that the negative price action for Bitcoin is over. I'm saying that, but you'll be asking, why would I be in a Bitcoin long? Well, in my community, we still try to take advantage of these short-term price movements. And as you can see, it was looking like we were forming a little bit of a double bottom on the 1 hour chart. And so of course, I went ahead and entered that trade. Currently, at the time of recording, we're sitting in just below $2,000 of profits. And if you want to join that community, you have the third link in my description down below. Message me the word signals and I will onboard you into my free signals group where myself and other analysts post trading setups on a daily basis. Now back to the Bitcoin chart. You know my expectations. I do think we will be moving lower, but it doesn't mean that we can't have a little bit of another move to the upside to form a more rounded top here before seeing lower prices. I just think that it would be way too easy for the market to completely capitulate from here. Yes, of course, this was an ugly weekly candle, but it doesn't mean that we're just going to immediately tank into a bear market like everyone else is calling. We saw over here before the holidays of last year, we formed a very ugly weekly candle, but Bitcoin ultimately held as support and then formed a little bit of a higher high. I don't think that we should ignore this possibility. One of the key reasons being not just because of this liquidity chart, but also if we take a look at the Bitcoin exchange liquidation map, it's starting to look very, very even. Usually when there's a ton of longs in the market, you want to be careful because it's likely that we're going to go back down and liquidate those longs. And when there's a lot of shorts in the market, it is really the same scenario. We go up to that level, we go ahead and liquidate those shorts before Bitcoin makes its next proper move. So on the left here, we have the cumulative long liquidation leverage. If Bitcoin were to go all the way down to $92,000 from here, we would liquidate just under $17 billion worth of longs. Now on the right side here, we have the cumulative short liquidation leverage. If Bitcoin were to go to its all-time high, we would liquidate just under $13 billion worth of shorts. I think a lot of people are betting that the market is over, and I think that they're in for a rude awakening. Right now, though, this doesn't mean that Bitcoin has to explode to the upside or just start crashing immediately. It's highly likely that we play within these liquidity levels. And you can see on this chart that the higher the bars are, the more liquidity there is to grab. So ultimately, it wouldn't surprise me if we flirt all the way down to around the 98K level, but we also make our way climbing up to around $111,000 because there's a ton of liquidity here to be grabbed. I'm telling you right now, I think that both sides will ultimately get wrecked before Bitcoin confirms its next big move. Will that be a breakout to the upside, or will we just come crashing straight down? You know my base case. I think that Bitcoin will likely have another relatively weak summer. Altcoins will continue to struggle over the course of the summer, and we will simply just chop around. That is my base case. That being said, though, there are still a ton of opportunities to make money in this ranging market. Now, let's take a look at Ethereum once more. So you can see that we continue to hold this level as support. And if Bitcoin behaves, as I always say in my community, it is highly likely that Ethereum will at the very least target this wick up here around 2,788, and the next key level you can see on this chart is around 2,845. So if Bitcoin stays healthy, this would be an excellent Ethereum long targeting around these levels. Now don't get greedy. If you get in significant profits, you want to take those profits because the market can turn around in an instant. So make sure you're careful about that. And that reminds me, if you want to trade crypto, you have the first link in my description down below, which brings you directly to Bluffin. This is actually the exchange where I opened my most recent Bitcoin long, currently sitting now at $3,200 in profit. Now, Bluffin also gives you a 15% bonus cashback, which means you can earn up to $5,000 in futures reward. This is of course limited to the first 50 users that sign up with the first link in my description down below. Another top exchange that I like using is also Weeks. Just by simply connecting your phone number and your email to your account, you can get between $10 and $100. And if you are a big trader, you can earn up to $30,000 in rewards for trading on Weeks. That is the second link in my description down below. Now let's take a look at the total crypto market cap excluding Bitcoin, because I talked about this scenario before. I thought that it was highly likely that we would get rejected right around this level, the $1.25 trillion level. Why? We wicked into it several times, and even in the previous cycle, it acted as significant resistance and significant support. So this was a key milestone for us to hopefully try to break since we set those lows when Bitcoin went all the way down to $74,500. But right now, this still looks like a pretty important rejection, and I do think that we could come back down here below the $1 trillion level. As I said in one of my previous videos, I think at this point, if we come and retest this level, it would be an amazing opportunity to accumulate altcoins. Yes, you heard that right. Now, you know on the channel, we've been talking about Bitcoin dominance at length, which might surprise you that I just said that altcoins would be entering an interesting range. But keep in mind, we would still have to erase around $150 billion of crypto market cap, excluding Bitcoin, for me to deem it a great opportunity for altcoins. I will make sure to keep you updated which altcoins I'm looking at. And if you want access to that before anyone else, you have to join my free Telegram community, which is the third link in my description down below. That's also where I post some of my trading setups. Now, taking a look at gold. Why am I bringing up gold? Traditionally, when gold pumps, it is a risk-off signal. Although my perception of Bitcoin is that it's digital gold, the world still does not see it like this. And so when gold pumps, it is a risk-off signal. We would likely see some more downtrend for stocks and also for Bitcoin. I know I might sound a little bit confusing here talking about both potential scenarios. I mean, meanwhile, I'm showing you a Bitcoin trade where I'm up $3,000, but I'm saying that Bitcoin could go lower. These are very short-term trades. Keep that in mind. Now, when I look at the bigger picture and I see what's happening with gold and the broader news across markets, I still think that Bitcoin can go ahead and move lower. But in this process, it will certainly shake people out. Look at this disgusting red weekly candle. Most people at that point thought it was over. Then we got another red candle for that week, and then all of a sudden, boom, a new all-time high. This is why I'm telling you to be cautious. I would not be going max short from here. However, if we do get a bearish retest of the previous all-time high, sitting right around $109,000, that would be a key short signal for me. So make sure you're ready for this. In my community, I will make sure to keep you updated if I enter a little bit of a longer term short for Bitcoin. So let's quickly go over what just happened in terms of Bitcoin acquisition news. This Hong Kong company announced a plan to acquire $1.5 billion worth of Bitcoin. It seems like the MicroStrategy strategy is really starting to rub off across the world. We also have Russia's largest bank that launched structured bonds linked directly to Bitcoin. That is crazy. And Metaplanet buys another 1,088 Bitcoins worth $114 million. They now hold 8,888 Bitcoins worth around $930 million. Crazy stuff. These guys were the first ones to follow MicroStrategy as soon as they announced their initial strategy. And speaking of MicroStrategy and Michael Saylor, Saylor is now up almost 50% all time, with Bitcoin just chilling above $100,000. His latest acquisition was only around 700 Bitcoins, which cost $75 million. Not that much considering how big his other purchases were. At least if we scroll now, he didn't only catch the bottom, because before, you'll remember when I covered his Bitcoin acquisition strategy, it seemed like he kept on buying above $100,000. But when Bitcoin was lower and lower and lower, he did accumulate a lot. Here we can see $2 billion around 87,000. Then we got $500 million around 84. He didn't accumulate any in the 70K region, which is a little bit unfortunate. But as it went up at a $92,000 Bitcoin, he accumulated $1.4 billion. So at least he's being a little bit more strategic about his Bitcoin purchases, because typically with his consistency, he would have normally bought the $112,000 top. Another reason why I'm a little bit more bullish on Ethereum, of course, this is only if Bitcoin can hold, is taking a look at the Ethereum ETF inflows. This has been significant inflows for quite some time now. We are seeing $38 million worth of inflows, 84 million, 91 million, 70 million. The reason why this is significant is because we had a lot of outflows prior to these dates. And if we take a look at the Bitcoin ETF flow, you can see that if I scroll down, we saw $300 million of outflows and $600 million of outflows. So despite this, Ethereum is still seeing inflows in their spot ETF. Now, I have to warn you, all of this goes straight in the garbage if Bitcoin decides to dump from here. As I said, I do think we can hold this level as support and trickle on up a little bit further. And of course, this would fuel Ethereum. I also think that Bitcoin does have a strong likelihood to move lower in the more medium term. What does this mean? If Bitcoin can hold where we're currently at, Ethereum will likely see a very, very nice pump. However, if Bitcoin starts dumping, that is when Ethereum will likely start losing this level as support. But I do think it would be taking a pretty significant Bitcoin dump for Ethereum to start losing these levels. And also, so long as Ethereum is still below its bull market support band against Bitcoin, you shouldn't be super bullish for the medium to long term for ETH. I will gladly turn more medium term bullish for Ethereum if we can hold this level as support on its bull market support band against Bitcoin. And right now, if you're in the community, I hope that you're making profit on this Bitcoin long. It's looking very, very solid. Again, if you'd like to join, it is the third link in my description down below, free Telegram community. And that sums up today's quick update. I do think that Ethereum does have some upside if Bitcoin behaves. That being said, in the more medium term, I would not be surprised if Bitcoin goes a little bit lower and fills that fair value gap at the very least. Overall, though, I don't think that we're just going to dump into a bear market like a lot of crypto influencers are now predicting. I think that as more and more people continue to try to short this market, they will likely get wrecked. But that doesn't also mean that the longs from down below won't get wrecked either. Make sure you're staying vigilant when you're trading this market. If you enjoyed the content, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe, and I'll see you in tomorrow's video.